Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Gen X Vibes. Latest episode here today. We're going to be talking about 70s dinners and food and the whole dinner experience entitled Elbows Off the Table. As usual, I am joined by my co-host and brother, John Pat, out in
Hey,
San Diego. How are you?
physically, I'm in San Diego, but virtually and mentally, I'm in the bedroom that we all wish we had.
Oh, didn't we?
hmm
Very
Yeah.
cool. Very rad.
Thank you. That's what I was going for, is rad.
Very rad. Very rad. So as usual, we're trying to keep the vibe alive and just kind of reminisce and remember back and have a bunch of like moments that kind of, like you said last time, boost our serotonin even just for a moment. And so this topic is the 70s dinners. I know I have a lot, not a lot, but a few that I still served to my monsters. So maybe not necessarily, proudly considering the process aspect, but how about you? What came to mind for you?
Well, so before we get into the specific food, I'm going to set a little bit of a when you asked me to start thinking about this. First and foremost, I would say that our generation, Gen X, is probably the last generation, in my experience or opinion, where family dinners were sacrosanct. Like it was, it was the thing, it was expected. It wasn't just our family, my other friends, it was the same. You had to be home by a certain time. Your parents would say, "Hey, go out and play. I don't want to see you until dinner," right? And but you knew you had to be home for dinner, and everybody knew that. And it wasn't just our family, it was kids, and it just seems like over time that has disappeared.
Well,
And
I
then
would,
with
sorry, but I would posit that the microwave caused that
yeah,
because
I
once we
mean,
had the microwave, mom could make dinner and then we just had our plates.
yep. uh, could be, but for whatever reason, whatever the root cause is we lost it. I mean, you could also argue that Gen X was potentially one of the last generations where both parents didn't have to work, right? And then as you got on and on, older and older, both parents started working, and so having a sit down dinner and schedules and what have you was you became increasingly difficult. So when I think about this, well, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite dishes as well, but also for me, it was when I look back on it, it was the whole experience, centered around it, and some of the habits that we would have, some of the things that we would say, oh, you gotta be part of the clean plate club. Okay, I'd like to blame my weight issues on that, probably unfairly, but we were taught, hey man, if it's on your plate, you better eat it.
Right.
Yeah, and just some of the other experiences, that I take with me. The food was
Yeah.
one thing, but the whole experience was another.
Well, and
Yeah,
that is what I wanted, that what
yeah,
what my impetus was there. It's not
yeah,
not just to talk about the food, and that's why the title "Elbows Off the Table."
yep,
I mean, that was just a mantra.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So for me, I always kind of order things in my mind chronologically, and so I start with, okay, you know what? Every day it was known you had to be home for dinner. Like, exceptions were allowed, but generally they were doled out sparingly.
Mhm.
And so it was, I want to say probably around 6:30,
Yeah.
6:30 or 7. Like we had to have dinner
Yeah.
because you had to watch the evening news, right?
Hmm.
Like, that was a staple. And so somewhere around there, 7 o'clock dinner, right? And everybody there. And to this day, like I'm not a religious person, but to this day, if I met somebody and they want to say grace, I know it like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
it's just ingrained within me. Um, yeah, and then,
Wait,
and
how'd
then
it
to
go?
your bless us, Lord, and these are gifts which we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Make us ever mindful of the needs of others, especially those less fortunate than ourselves. Amen.
Thank you. I couldn't remember, but as soon as you said the first two words, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it just, it flows off the tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was also, just kind of a little bit of ceremony. Dad sat at one side, Mom sat at another. Like, it was almost like you would think that we dressed for dinner, but nope, no, no, it was part of the rules. And then like dad started it. Like dad started, he took food first, he
Mhm.
started dishing out, and then you kind of passed the plates around.
Yep.
Um, so, and then of course, nobody was allowed to call you during this time,
Ooh.
right? If the phone rang, dad answered it, and dad would say, I'm sorry, he or she is at dinner. They will have to call you back when we are done. Like nothing interrupted the ceremony. So, you know, kind of interesting. And I think that, you know, not to judge or anything like that. I think it's a kind of a very fundamental and interesting element of the family dynamic that we experience. And frankly, I think possibly for whatever reason, our generation was the last one to experience.
Yeah, I mean, like with my guys, we did it early on, um, as much as possible. Definitely not as sacred, right? But then once they all had activities, like soccer, sports and stuff like that, then we were just running
Mhm.
and it just disappeared.
Yeah.
I was sad about because there's something about, I mean, for this has too much of a negative connotation, but like a forced, like a forced,
Communal exercise.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then there is connection,
Mhm.
so if you're, I mean, it's half of half of life is proximity, right? So if you're not in proximity with each other to talk about your day, then you miss the
Yeah.
opportunity.
And of course, this was before the cell phones and before, everything else and all the other distractions. And so you had no choice but to be present. You were present, right? And you were forced to be present, if, well, at least in our house, right? If it was obvious that you were drifting off, if you were, not that this ever happened, but God forbid you were to bring a book or a comic book or something like that to the table. No, that's not allowed. This is our time to actually force some connection across all of us. Hey, how was your day? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
But talking about like people calling, and that not being shut down. Do you remember when Eddie, our uncle, lived with us and he would work out?
I mean, well, first of all, I find anybody at the gym who's a grunter to be a little bit, let's just call it rude. But to have somebody, 8 feet below you while you're trying to have a family dinner, just grunting every time that he's lifting, yeah,
So
it brought
just
a
to
whole new
explain, our
experience.
uncle lived with us for a short time, and wasn't too much older than us, right? He was like in his mid 20s or something, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And he
He
worked the
worked.
night shift at the airport. So, obviously on different schedule. And so we had workout weights and stuff in our basement, which were literally directly underneath our kitchen table.
Mhm.
And his time to work out was when we sat down to dinner, and me and dad would get so pissed.
And what's funny about, I mean, the really funny thing about it is Eddie idolized our dad. Like,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, he ended up idolizing our dad, and yet for however long that was, that struggle between my father and Eddie to try to get Eddie stop grunting, and they would have conversation and conversation about it, but Eddie just couldn't break that habit, and Dad would sit there fuming, and of course all the rest of us would be sitting around the table, half laughing, half waiting for this powder keg of emotion to blow up. Just like you're eating, watching Dad, like, all right, are we in the danger zone
This
yet?
is going to
Like,
be the grunt that puts him over the edge.
oh, exactly.
We're back.
Yeah, you could tell Eddie was hitting the end of one of his reps, but he's like, "Oh," and you're like, is this the one? Is this the one that's going to cause that vein in Dad's, temple to pop?
Oh my God, that was so funny. Yeah.
Hmm.
But
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
just to speak toward the sacredness of it. Yeah.
Yep. And then before you talk about specific foods, like the other thing is, and I wonder if this is just, Gen X or what have you, but there was, a pretty focused on saving money costs. Like we rarely ate out. Nowadays eating out, one could argue that you probably eat out more than you eat in or order it and everything, what have you. But for us, it was a rare treat. Okay, and a lot of it was centered around cost. And so when things like you didn't finish your plate, when
Mhm.
things like there were leftovers and what have you, that was a valuable commodity, right? And also, they tried to teach you through food, about scarcity, about, value and what have you. And so if you'll remember our Nana, if you ate breakfast and you didn't finish your breakfast, she would put it in the refrigerator, and that's what you would have for lunch.
Mhm.
So if you had Lucky Charms for breakfast and you didn't finish it for lunch, you had Lucky Charms flavored mush.
Mhm.
So
I forgot
it's
about
just,
that. I mean, it's interesting because it makes sense, right? Because she was brought up and dad partly in the Depression,
hmm
right? Where
she'll,
you did have to, like, they used to recycle not for the earth, but to reuse and save money and, you know, not just for the
yeah.
sexiness.
I mean, I don't know if you remember, but down in our basement, you probably didn't because A, it was the basement, and B, this deals with work. Um, there you go. Yeah. So Dad used to keep all of the screws. He used to keep all of the baby food bottles, right? And so he had these little bottles, and he would keep screws and nuts and things like that,
Yeah,
and
he
he would
was so
keep them in those.
handy.
Yeah, yeah, right. We had to move when finally all the light bulbs went out in the house because they didn't know how to change them. You know, but yeah, but they
Sorry,
would,
it's ironic that he had that area. Yeah.
Oh, I know, but it also just shows that that was a learned behavior. It was not something that was, he's like, oh, I'm a handy guy, so I'm going to find a way to make sure that I save all this stuff. He learned it from his father, like, saving nails and screws and saving bottles so that you can use them to store things in, and so on and so forth was, all. And again, like if you think about it, like our parents weren't pack rats by any means, right? But like as you would know, if we went down into our basement and we were trying to find and sneak some booze out of the house, we would find some boxes from easily 10, 15 years ago, right? Of old booze, old wine, what have you. Nowadays, I clean out my cabinets like once or twice a year, and I'm like, "Heck, don't need it anymore, don't need it anymore." They
Yeah,
held on to
that's
stuff
a
forever.
personality trait, I think, because you and
They do.
Alex are total
Purgers.
what'd you say? Purge.
Purgers. Yeah.
Guys purge. I somewhat purge. Um, but yeah, I think
Mm,
there's personalities to it. Yeah.
yeah, fair
And it's
enough.
just freaking life. I mean, there's 7 people in that house and yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about my house and how much digging out I have to do, and it's
You feel judged? Is that what's happening here?
Jim today was like, so what's going on with the garage there? Because we because we got rid of our shed because it was compromised, and so everything's in the garage. I'm like, he's like, why don't you get another shed? I'm like, I just because we got to go through it.
Yep.
If we get another shed, we're just gonna shove it there. But
Yeah.
anyway, back to
Anyway,
back to the
food.
table.
All right. So for me, first of all, some of the big pictures that I remember, and it does kind of make me think back to value, scarcity, what have you. I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back on it, money was an issue. We had 5 kids, the two parents, one income household, what have you, and but there was by no stretch of the imagination were we eating high on the hog. It was mass production at a low cost, and spaghetti,
Mm-hmm.
right? Was a staple. Um, this
Meat
cut of
sauce.
meat. What's that? Spaghetti and meat sauce. Yep.
That's what
Right.
peppers.
hmm hmm Um, there was a cut of meat, and I found this out now that I live in California. The cut of meat exists everywhere, but they have different terms for it. But where we grew up, it was called London broil.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that there were different cuts of steak, that there were different grades, and that prime rib is better than this, or so on and so forth. I only knew red meat steak is London broil. And mom used to watch the flyers, and if it was on sale and if it was at a low, like less than $1 a pound, she would buy that. And I didn't realize that she would marinate it as a way to make it tender, and then dad would grill it, and then like they'd slice it very thin, which is because it's a tough piece of meat and what have you. And so when you look back on it, I didn't realize how much of the food that we ate and the food that was cooked for us really had its foundation in price point, cost, minimizing costs, so that our family of 7
I mean,
could be
I
fed.
would say mom was a freaking magician
hmm
because I mean, everybody these days laments that, the hardest part about being an adult is figuring out what to have for dinner every freaking night,
Yep,
and she did it every night,
every night, right? And again, on schedule,
on a
right?
budget, on schedule. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's so many times for us, where we're just like, hey, at the last minute, what are we going to eat, right? And and then it's maybe a dash out to the grocery store, or just a capitulation, and we're like, okay, well, we're going to order in. and what have you. None of that happened. Everything was pre-planned. Everything was, thought through,
I still make
timed
spaghetti
and what
that
have you.
make spaghetti that way.
What's that?
I still make spaghetti that way. Do you?
When you say that way,
Meat
walk me
sauce
through.
and diced green peppers
Yes, but
and
I mean,
ragu.
yeah. Well, see, now there are certain things from our generation that are iconic. Wonder Bread, ragu as a brand of tomato sauce and what have you, that I have to admit, as I got older, I realized not the best product on the market,
Oh
and
God, no,
I've
no,
moved
it's
away
very
from.
good. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we're on the so while I
You
have
know me, I'm like, I fear change.
eh, and for me it's, whatever Costco has in stock. So,
And
um
along those lines, I'm sorry, were you gonna say something else about
nope,
spaghetti?
nope,
Okay.
go for it.
So, spaghetti's, meat sauce spaghetti's sister, brother, hamburger helper.
Oh yeah. I never liked Hamburger Helper.
I still,
You loved Hamburger Helper. I don't know what it was. There was just something about it that, like, the flavor profile never appealed to me. And so whatever we were having, and you loved it, and whenever we were having it, I was like, yeah, okay, well,
but
I'll eat anything, right? But
eat it for the boys, they eat it.
yeah, and then it's interesting because there, along with that, there are some iconic brands that I don't even know if they're still around, right? But they
Oh
really,
no, fun.
Rice-A-Roni.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? San Francisco treat. You
Mhm.
couldn't watch a game show where somehow, some way, that was like one of the prizes. Like, hey, here,
All right.
you know,
You can see the
rice
person on the trolley.
on the trolley. Yep, heading down right there on that iconic street in San Francisco. But again, it's like, hey, congratulations, you won a box of rice. Like, ooh. And it was funny because I was talking to my wife last night, and obviously my wife is of Asian descent, and she's like, I love rice. I couldn't live without it. She asked me, she's like, could you live without rice? I'm like, yeah,
Okay.
honestly, like, wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah,
Right.
all right,
So I do
so
want to have a caveat on the hamburger helper though.
mhm.
Only the original cheeseburger macaroni. It can and like now and then they'd like gotten crazy and done like a double cheeseburger and like a tuna helper and all that. So I mean, I'm just OG hamburger
OG,
helper.
back to the original. I gotcha. Still, all of it is attempting to put lipstick on that pig. Ugh, it's gross. Um, so another one, okay, that I feel like this started coming on later uh, uh, in our teens. Mom started doing stews, and one of them was, remember that soup starter?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like dehydrated vegetables
Mhm.
and
Seasoning.
in a seasoning packet, right? And then she'd cube up some inexpensive meat and what have you, and brown it and make a soup out of that. And so that was something. Being raised Catholic, we always abided by no meat on Friday,
Mhm.
and so our tuna casserole became a staple. And one of the things that I found was, apparently that's not just like I thought tuna casserole, there's only one recipe. Apparently, different people's families have different tuna casserole recipes.
But do
So
they all
everybody,
potato chips?
what's that?
Do they all use potato chips? Because ours did.
I I know. Well, I mean, because we were very health conscious at the time. So,
We
right.
had tuna casserole, tater tots, and spinach.
Yep,
That was the whole meal. Yeah.
that was the meal. Yep,
And
yeah.
that's
Oh
still
my God.
the boys don't eat
And
that, but I will.
yeah, and it's funny. I forgot about the spinach. The spinach was, I want to say, bird's eye, and it came frozen in that, like, almost cellophane packet or what,
The box.
and then but then you boiled it, right?
When you didn't have a
Hmm.
microwave, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, I didn't. Mom did.
Well, yeah, of course.
Thanks, Mom.
Thank you, Mom. So yeah, no, that was our standard Friday night meal, right?
Yeah.
But then some of the things that I think of, again, when I think of it's not necessarily a meal, it's more of like components, right?
Mhm.
And I gotta say, since I left our house to go to college, okay, from that point forward, I don't think, if you add up the n number of years of my life since graduating college, forward, actually even since going to college forward, if you add up how much Velveeta cheese I have eaten in that period of my life compared to how much Velveeta cheese I ate from the time that I was born until the time that I left from college, I don't think that I've reached
Huh,
parity yet.
I don't remember that.
Oh, Jen, we used to take Velveeta cheese. We used to put it into a bowl, put it into a microwave,
Oh,
melt
that,
it
yeah, yeah, that I remember. But I mean,
a
it's
lot.
like an ingredient in a lot of what mom made.
Fair enough, but so I'm just thinking like,
Now they sell that in a jar. We were ahead of the curve.
hey, where were we though? I mean, I just think
Well,
like, the sit down dinner, the iconic meals that our family had, what have you. But then I think about like the other things, like, and for me, steakums.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. For a while there, when we were in high school, we ate steakums all the time. Those frozen sheets of meat, and we'd fry it up with butter and, and
and
like,
put cheese on it.
and then put cheese on it and what have you. I'll have a cheesesteak every now and then and whatnot, but I don't even know if they make steakums anymore.
They do.
Oh, see, I'm sitting here being like, yeah, you know what? And then eventually I evolved and I moved on from eating this garbage. And you're like, no, this is also is a staple in my house.
I didn't say it was a staple. I just know that it still exists, and I did make it sometimes for the boys. I will say.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
I
But
was
but
saying
and
in the 70s, like not necessarily, for our like daily meals and stuff, but I feel like there was just like a lot of molds and rings. Remember like the Jello molds and like
well, you knew you were going to a Sunday wear your best Sunday dress fancy party when Jello
something
had,
jiggling.
yeah, when you come home and on the counter is like, 8 boxes of Jello and that bunt cake mold.
Yeah,
You're like, ooh,
yeah.
is the queen coming? Is something big about to happen here?
Called like aspic or something.
Aspic.
Aspic. And did that
Yep.
have meat in it?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't.
I don't know.
I,
But there's a lot of molds. Yeah, in the
you
70s.
know, but that's another one. When you think about meat, and if you look at it, it was kind of like there were advances in like the 50s and 60s as it related to preserving. I'll call them advances. There were advances in the 50s and 60s as it relates to like preserving and how certain things were preserved. And so meat from a can was pretty common in the like at least in the 70s. So I don't know if you remember, but sometimes mom would like buy this. It was an entire ham in this like
Oh yeah.
football shaped,
And you like
yeah, yep.
yeah, they like open like a
And then it was surrounded by this gelatinous stuff,
I don't remember that. Right.
right? And mom used to, if I remember correctly, mom used to take cloves and individually put the actually, the spice, the cloves in it, and so it would have that. And then I think she also covered it in mustard
Huh?
and then would bake it. And to this day, I hate mustard, can't stand the taste of cloves, but just like the traumatic experience of watching that ham come out of I mean, like I imagine that that's what watching, like a farm animal give birth looks like. Okay, and nobody wants to see that and be like, so is that what we're having for dinner? Like, oh,
On that, and we're good. Yeah.
yeah, oh,
Now that might be where my consistency, you know, thing came from because
mhm,
the consistency of that sounds absolutely disgusting.
oh yeah, yeah. But going back to the aspic and the molds and what have you, Jello, like and Jello brand Jello,
Mhm.
right? Like, I mean, ask you, when was the last time you bought Jello? You might have bought it for a
Yeah, just
specific
in the
reason.
Jello shots, to be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, right? But if you think about it, you'd open up our cabinets.
Yeah.
There's always like 5 of them, right?
Hmm.
Like, it was a staple.
Yeah.
Kudos to their marketing, right? Because they convinced people. Same thing
Well,
with
you know,
mayonnaise.
when you when what it is now your brand name, right? Like Band-Aids or
Yep,
Jello, it's gelatin,
yep,
right? Like
yep.
that.
Mhm.
But along the same lines, I remember mom making Jello pudding,
Yeah. I mean,
And
who wouldn't trust Bill Cosby? I mean, as a spokesman, okay, he just exudes fatherly love.
Mhm.
And yeah. Yeah.
Nurturing safety, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I remember when mom made it, she would make it in the little cups, the little
Hmm.
glass scalloped cups. And then no, but she would say, do you want the saran wrap on it so it doesn't have skin? Or do
Hmm.
you want, and I was always like, no skin.
I love the skin.
Ah!
Oh, give me that. You know, it's like a it's like a good flan, like or a creme brulee where you have to like break through the
Yet not,
top.
and yet not.
Oh, yep. But yeah, yeah, I can't tell you the last time I had pudding, right? But it started off with having those boxes of Jello brand pudding, right? And eventually it became pudding cups. Yeah, you know, I just, again, I wonder, is that a generational thing? Like, do kids nowadays, do parents buy their kids pudding
I mean, they
cups?
have the pre-made Jello, like
Yeah.
putting in the fridge section now. But I still feel like people want to eat it when they're sick. You know, what I mean? Like, it's such a like hospital,
Yeah. Yeah.
easy on your stomach type thing. But
We won't even get into what Jello is
how
actually
we will
made
not,
of.
because it's like
Okay, yeah.
and stuff, right? And
What's that?
marshmallows, because it's like horse hooves and stuff, right? And like
It's it's bone material. Yeah,
and
it's material from
marshmallow
bone.
thing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So don't tell me that because I love my Rice Krispie treats.
Yeah. So then, also mayonnaise, like somewhere along the line, like our parents were taught that like mayonnaise is a healthy, fun dish.
That it makes a salad.
It makes a salad. Yep. And I don't know if you remember this, but again, going when like we were trying to be fancy, okay? One of them is mom used to my recollection is at least one time we had this, and obviously it was indelible memory. She took half canned peaches,
Mm-hmm.
okay, right, and put them so that they were kind of like the flat side down, and then yeah, I'm gonna get to the chase. She made them look like mice.
Oh my
She put,
God, I
remember
forgot
that?
and pears.
Yeah. And she took the cinnamon like the little cinnamon things for cake
I
decorations, and those became the eyes and so on and so forth.
totally forgot about those.
Yeah. So it was
Have
interesting.
mayo in them though.
What's that?
You didn't have mayo in them.
I don't think that that one had mayo, to be fair,
But
but it was just very interesting. Like there was the day to day, right, which was, very much trying to, just make sure that we were, able to rub two pennies together and what have you. But then when it was, hey, here we go, fancy Sunday go to meeting, okay, like it was weird what constituted highbrow,
right. And that
you
was
know?
across the culture because I remember seeing like hot dogs made into like, you know what I mean? Like some sort of artwork and it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
you know,
Is that Notre Dame? No, that's Oscar Myers. Like, I mean,
my boo
yeah,
boo has a first name.
yep.
Yep. Yep.
And there were cookbooks. Like, mom didn't just come up with this stuff herself. Like, there were cookbooks that were put out by the manufacturers.
Right. Yeah.
What have
The cream, the Campbell's, all the recipes that cream of chicken and cream of mushroom are based on.
you.
I still have that book. I think it was a red cover. And
Yeah,
then like, Pillsbury, you're right. It was the brands that came out with the how to use their stuff, which is brilliant, actually. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then somewhere along the lines, all of that went away, right? It was back to basic, and then you got the celebrity chefs teaching you how to cook from scratch and what have you. Like our parents, they learned how to cook by trusting Bill Bill Cosby. Like, here, let's take down the book, and
Hmm.
oh, yeah, that's weird. I wouldn't think that we'd need to put sedatives in this, but okay.
That's horrible.
Yeah, probably probably a little offsides on that one, eh?
We have to laugh or else we'll throw up.
I mean, I'm just angry at him that he's taken Fat Albert away from me.
I know.
Yeah,
You're like
but
school on Thanksgiving. No.
no class.
No. Sure.
So yeah,
Also,
and
right. And fast food wise, nothing really.
the last thing is, and again, I don't know whether this is a generational thing or whether just you mature, you grow out of it. We used to our the snacks that we have, like you and I used to eat ding dongs and devil. What was the Hostess devil cakes?
Dogs.
What's that?
Devil dogs.
Devil dogs. Thank you. Okay.
Oh,
Sorry. But one of the things that I found interesting about that was the regionalness of these
okay.
baked, goods because we'd have Hostess with the Mostess uh, where we grew up. But then when we went and visited family in the Mid-Atlantic in Delaware, they had, I want to say it was Little Debbie's or what
Little
have you.
Dims and tasty cakes. Tasty cakes are
Tasty
mostly
cake.
Philadelphia. Yeah.
Tasty cake, yeah.
Mhm.
But so you'd get like this new experience of different snack cakes, and you're like, ooh, what is
Oh, yeah.
this?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do a whole nother episode on snacks, I feel like,
Yeah.
Also like, yeah, where you kept them, like Auntie's kept them in her dishwasher.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, funny places where food was stored, like,
Right. Or like, your friends, like you always knew which friends, we didn't have hostess in the house very much.
not until we were in high school, like, and we
Right.
could go out and buy it ourselves.
We didn't, but you knew the friends, who did,
Oh yeah,
who had the crap. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I mean, if we're gonna do snacks at a later time, then I'll stop. But the progression of popcorn, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you know, first Jiffy Pop. Ooh, look at that, the foil. Then the whole air popper craze. Like you
First
bought the
oil in a,
air. What's that?
first oil in a pan with
Oh yeah.
kernels, and the lid. That was the
Mhm.
yummiest kind.
Yeah. When I was in my 30s, I lived in a house that I was renting, and it didn't have a microwave, and I was fine with it. And one time, the woman that I was dating, we were doing a movie night. I'm like, hey, let's make popcorn. And she walked in, and she's like, but you don't have a microwave. I'm like, yeah, we'll make it the regular way. And she's like, what is that? Like,
I'm not gonna ask what age difference there was between you guys.
back when I had hair, Jen.
So that's a factor. No, I'm just kidding. Hey,
Yeah.
before we go, tell us about your t-shirt.
Oh, yeah. It's a rocket pop. And actually, this is
Pom pom.
made. Bomb Pop. There you go. Exactly. And actually, this is made from by a friend of mine, Dan Bransfield. He's an artist based out of San Francisco, and he's got a website. It's called danbrand.com, and he's got a whole bunch of a lot of times food based, but also generationally based t-shirts and posters and designs and what have you. So check him out. It's pretty cool.
Danbrand.com. Yeah, he's wicked talented. Yeah.
Mhm. Wicked awesome.
Wicked awesome. All right, my friend. Well, I was afraid that having this conversation we'd be hungry afterwards, but I'm good. You good?
Yeah. Yeah. No. I
All
think I
right.
want to go hit the gym.
Well, it's not good
Yeah,
cookies.
I'm just kidding.
Not cookies. So you can grunt. All
Exactly.
right. Love you lots.
I love you. All right, we'll talk later.